Good morning, everyone. Aaron Zauber here, Fully Alive Coaching. Welcome to Fully Alive TV here at Nissan Communication Studio. Uh, Happy early Thanksgiving. That's coming up. And today I'm going to talk to you about the anatomy of being triggered, what that means, why that happens, how to deal with it. And I might touch on a little bit later as well, aligning with your purpose and maybe even talk about how those two things are related. But what I'm most fired up to talk with you about is about this idea of being triggered and how to deal with it and what that is. So I'm going to remind you that if you have questions, you can call in. The phone number is the easiest way to call in 919-518-9773. You'll see that there on the banner. So anytime you can just call in with your cell phone. You can use the Skype computer's 2K voice, which is just your voice, and you can also log into the chat here and ask a question if you'd like, and we might get to that as well. So that really helps. That's a valuable participation from you. Helps make things easier. Um, what we're doing today is again creating and expanding our consciousness so that we can live and walk in more harmony and peace and balance so that we can be more fully alive, essentially. So we got Thanksgiving coming up, right, in a couple days. For a lot of us, I guess, even around the world, I guess a lot of people sort of celebrate it as a token, but I guess mostly an American holiday here. And a lot of times, the reason why I want to talk about being triggered is because the people who can trigger us the most are usually the ones closest to us. And that ends up being, usually our family, our close friends. Robert Masters, one of my favorite spiritual and psychotherapist teachers. He's written a dozen plus books and has some great interviews on the Sounds True podcast. He talks about relationships as a crucible as well as a sanctuary for personal growth. So again, a, a sanctuary, so a safe place where there's actually enough trust and intimacy that some healing can happen, and that and at the same time it's also a crucible. It's this refining fire that helps to purify the gold. A crucible is this big metal pot that they put gold in, or some metal in, and the impurities come to the top and they scrape them off. So it's this refining process that happens in, again, close relationships. So what happens when someone gets triggered? What is that about? Well, a stimulus happens, right? Some event, and um and then what happens is that energy, when you're connecting with another person, it's almost like a circuit, like an electrical circuit. And you're communicating with each other verbally and non-verbally, right? And like sometimes we can even get triggered again without words, right? We can just Have you ever had that experience where you're sitting next to someone and you just feel triggered by their presence? It can happen, right? And the reason why this happens, the way I see it, my perspective on it. So I invite you to consider this, and at the very least, just let it be food for thought for you. Is that there's a belief structure in your consciousness, in your map, your reality, that is being rubbed against. Okay, so let me try to think of an example of this. So like in a partnership, say you're, in a husband and wife scenario, or girlfriend boyfriend, or whatever's, maybe in a business partnership, but there's where two people are close. There's different levels, but let's just say some sort of close relationship. One of them wants to, say, I don't know, say spend more time with one than the other does. So there's sort of a conflict of desires. So that rubs up against personal boundaries. This might not be the best example, but think of it as sort of like a pipeline, and water rushing through the pipeline, and then there's almost like little snags that stop the flow of that energy, and it feels sort of rough. Maybe like, well, I guess a good example would be certain words. We have this social media. A lot of people, they get triggered by certain words on social media. This happened to me recently. I put out a post, and someone sort of criticized, like, "Hey, you shouldn't use that word. It's the F word." So we all have different opinions on that, right? So why would that trigger someone? Yeah, here we go. This is a good example. This is a workable one. So the way I see it is that person has a belief structure, and that word to them, that has a certain meaning. They've agreed within their map of reality that that word is intense, right? A lot of people have made this agreement. And when they hear that, what happens is, again, like rushing water, it stirs up a lot of emotion. Yeah, this is a good example because this applies, most people can feel that. They can feel the intensity of our mutual agreement about this word, right? The word, we've agreed that it means something. Because in one sense, a word it's really just like vibrating the air, right? We're making a sound. Like in another language, it wouldn't mean anything if someone didn't understand it. But they might even feel the intensity of those vibrations and the collective unconscious agreement of what those mean. What I see the most happening is that what we've done is we've tied our sense of identity, who we think we are. That's our ego, the way I see it. Our ego is just our sense of identity, who we think we are, who we consider ourselves to be in the world. That has become tied in with certain beliefs. And there are certain levels of sensation that we're not really willing to feel. So it bumps up on the edges of our comfort zone in terms of that sensation. We start to feel what some people might say unsafe, right? That's a word associated with this, like being triggered, right? There's a lot of sensation coming through. So around Thanksgiving, sometimes we're around family or friends, and maybe they're close to us, so there's that safety. On the one hand, there's that sort of that bond that creates some trust. This person's not going to necessarily go away or leave me super easily. They're probably going to continue to be in my life like they have been for the last, my whole life. So I have enough safety and trust with them to be myself, right? Drop the sort of effort to be on better behavior, and I can just be myself a little bit more. I can relax and let it all come out. And then you might be one of those people doing that. They might be one of those people. And so then the intensity starts to come through, right? And those beliefs that they have rub up on the beliefs that you have. Again, your sense of identity. And the degree of our attachment, the strength of our attachment to those belief structures is gonna be felt the more that they're sort of challenged. So the more that we can, and here's the key, the more that we can relax around the different ways that people see the world, around differing worldviews, and just sort of let that be okay. Let it be okay that someone has a different perspective than you have. I think in a lot of ways, like this makes a lot of sense conceptually to many of us. Like we've sort of, as a as a culturally, in many places around the world, we sort of get this at least at the conceptual level. Like, oh yeah, people have had different experiences, right? Someone who's been born and raised in Europe is likely to have had a different experience, a different indoctrination, a different cultural perspective shown to them, which they've come up believing, than someone raised, say, in Brazil, right? There's going to be cultural differences in the way they see the world. But for some reason, we don't let that be okay. It bothers us. And the reason that it bothers us so much is because we feel that our identity is threatened. There's the author, if you've heard of the book The Four Agreements by uh, Ruiz, what's his name? Don Miguel Ruiz, I think. He talks about how a clean mind loves to be touched. And the opportunity here is that when we have those moments, and I have tons of these moments, like we all have these moments where something touches our mind or our map, our reality, right? The way we view the world, and it pings us, right? And if it's uncomfortable, there's a lot of sensation there. And we know, we're convinced, we're convicted, we're sure, we're certain that the world is different from the way that they see the world. So the opportunity here is one to examine the trigger, right? Examine what's actually happening here, and can I let it be okay that someone sees the world differently than the way that I see it? Can we maybe find some mutual ground? Can we still respect each other even though we see the world differently? Knowing that, again, if you had been raised in that person's position with those experiences that they had had, with the books they've read, the associations they've had, the friends they've had, that you would likely believe exactly what they believe. You would likely see the world exactly the same way they see it, right? So, sort of expanding our awareness and cultivating some compassion for these different beliefs. Now, regardless, as much as we sort of attempt to do this, at some point we're all going to feel triggered by certain situations. There's boundary issues to work on. There's belief structures that we have where there's snags, right? There's snags in this energy flow. So I would say the first thing to do is to notice it. Okay. And even just the act of noticing the stimulus, like Viktor Frankl says, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, notice the space between the stimulus and your ability to respond, your responsibility. So there's the stimulus, and then notice that stimulus. Notice the intensity. Notice how the intensity can be okay. And these somatic practices that I often share with you, like the meditation, the body meditation, the body scan, if you do some yoga, you do some martial arts, or even just, taking time to take a walk in nature and just, move your body, a lot of times that can metabolize your energy enough to where you have some space. So first of all, you can notice that it's simply high sensation. So you're experiencing a lot of sensation. You've been triggered, right? Because where is the trigger really happening? Is the trigger happening outside of you? Is someone making you feel what you're feeling? No, of course not. This is a common misconception. It's very common misconception is that someone makes us feel a certain way. The truth is that when we back up, where are those feelings actually happening? Where's that intensity happening? Well, of course, it's happening inside of you based on your belief structures, based on your map, however conscious or unconscious it is, those feelings arise in you. You're the one actually feeling those things. And that same person could say the same thing to you, and you have a certain response, and say the exact same thing in the same tone to someone else, and that person has a different response, right? So the reason people have different responses is because actually that person sending that stimulus their way, yes, there's a stimulus coming at you, but it's hitting you and you're having a response, right? There's an emotional response. And it's different from anyone else's. It's likely to be different from anyone else's. So it's happening in you. And the reason why this is important is because the more that you can see this happening, the more that you're able to take responsibility, the ability to respond, and have awareness, which brings choice. And then you can choose how to navigate your life You can choose to have more awareness. You can also choose to cultivate your capacity to be with high sensation. Why would you want to do that? Well, one, it allows, so if you cultivate your capacity to be with high sensation, to be in that space of being triggered, as we say, there's a lot of reasons. One of the top ones is first of all, it allows you to be empowered. So you actually have more power, more capacity to respond in different ways. You're able to be more connected to yourself and others, which, by the way, that's a proportionate relationship. That's a reciprocal thing. Your connection, your capacity to connect with yourself and to be with yourself, to have presence, to love yourself is proportional. Okay. It's the same degree as your ability to connect with another person. You cannot listen to someone else or connect with someone else, or even, I would say, love someone else in the true sense of the word love more than you love yourself. And I'm just going to insert this because love is a confusing thing because we have different definitions, right? Can be a confusing. The way I see love is simply the capacity to be with, to have presence with. What true love is pure presence. It's the ability to maintain awareness without zoning out, without going off, but actually staying in connection with what is happening, with the direct experience of life as it's happening now. And ultimately, I imagine this leads to more balance, more relaxation, more flow, more life, more experience of being fully alive. So that's another reason to cultivate your capacity to, again, be with high sensation. The experience of life itself, the more we open up, the more we cultivate our perception, or some people call it our empathy, our sensitivity, the more capacity we have to be with life. And also, from a um, if you're someone in business or you got some sort of sales sales job, or even not necessarily a sales job, but if you just want some leverage, like how would it be? How would your life be if every action you took had more gravity behind it? If every word you spoke was weighted a little bit more and everything you did was a little bit more effective. That's what I mean by power, by empowerment. It's the capacity to move things, to make a difference, to make things happen in the world. So that's what I mean by power. A lot of times when we think about power, we think about power over, like power over someone else or domination. Because we have a lot of examples of that. We have a lot of examples of this sort of conflicting thing where people, again, they have this belief system, they have this idea, this imagery, this vision, and then they seek to enforce, again, power over that belief system on other people. And the reason that feels so terrible is because they're not respecting the sovereignty of that human. So this is all tied together. Maybe you can see why, maybe not. And by the way, if I know I'm talking here at quite a conceptual level. I should probably use some more examples. Um, what I love is if someone would like to call in, ask some questions. This would really help me explain what I'm trying to say here and help bring it home for a lot of people. Because right now, again, acknowledging I'm on a conceptual level with a lot of this stuff here. But what I'm seeking to do is give you a framework to help you become more empowered so that, and I'm talking about true power, the power that's a neutral sort of energy that can be leveraged to manifest your dreams, to create, to energize and grow what you want to build in the world, what you want to see more of. True power, not power over, but the power to be effective, in your dream. And you can do that by cultivating your capacity to be with high sensation. Sensation, in a way, it's almost like that's life itself, the energy that's moving through you and around you. And I invite you to consider that what you see around you is actually a reflection of your internal process, of your internal interior reality, what's happening on the inside of your body, your beliefs, conscious and unconscious, get reflected and show up around you. And when you get triggered by something around you, maybe see that, and maybe you don't see it in the moment, but maybe you see that as an opportunity to examine where is the power, where is the energy and the sensation sort of being blocked in your life. And maybe there's an opportunity here for you to relax into that and to allow other people to be themselves, which is really a gift for you because you're allowing you to be yourself through that. Okay, so what do you do though? What's something practical you can do to work with this, to work with that intense sensation? One, I would say again, first step is notice. Notice I'm triggered. Feel triggered right now. And maybe take a few breaths. That's important because the trigger is actually happening inside your body. So when you take some time to be with your body, where the experience is happening, you're loving it. You're being with it. You're loving it. So taking a few breaths. Again, notice, take a few breaths. Slow down, right? We can tend sometimes in the high sensation to speed up. It's outside of our comfort zone, right? It's like when you see people public speaking, someone speaking in public for the first time, there's a lot of energy there. Usually, a lot of times people interpret that as fear. And often the way they respond to that unconsciously, okay, in an autopilot type of way, is they speed up. And really, what might be needed is for them to slow down, take a few breaths, and then go from there. That's going to allow more leverage, more gravity in what they're saying. So there's number one. Now, from that place of more choice, of awareness, right? Awareness brings choice. So you notice, slow down. You can choose a few different things. Number one, maybe you choose to remain in that conversation. Say you're at the Thanksgiving table, right? The opinions come up, people are being themselves. Maybe you just choose to breathe and watch that energy sort of detaching from it as much as you can, not going away, but noticing it arise, putting your awareness in your body, and then maybe you ask a gentle question, right? You could do that. Maybe you choose to stay in the conversation. Sometimes a good strategy that people use, if it feels so intense that the fire is coming out and you feel like the fire might burn down the forest, um, you can step away, you know, and maybe high elite level skill. Maybe you even say, "Hey, I'm feeling so much right now that I want to just step away for a minute, and I'll be back soon." It took me years to realize that that was even a possibility. That you can actually, in that way, sort of maintain connection. So just so that you're not sort of abandoning someone. I mean, not ultimately. Again, it's that person's responsibility what they feel, but just to sort of maintain that connection by noticing the trigger, noticing the fire, if that's what it is coming up in you, then saying, "Hey, feeling a lot. I'm gonna take a few minutes, and I'll be back." It's just kind of like letting that person know that you still care about them, and you need to go calm down, right? Maybe think about some things, because that gives you a chance to slow down and allow your unconscious belief structures to come to the front. Again, that's the opportunity, is it allows us to see what's actually there. Like, what are the snags in the pipeline? What do I believe about the world? Do I have control structures in my reality where I think I need to enforce my view of reality on other people, the power over system? Okay, that's an old paradigm. We are coming out of that paradigm. We're coming out of the power over system. And I want you to help me spread the word that we're coming out of this, because literally we can create this as a collective. We can continue creating this. I mean, we really are. Really are creating the decentralization of authority structures and this old power over paradigm where we think where people think they need to enforce their perspective on other people. That's dying because it's not sustainable. It takes a lot of effort. Wars are fought over this thing, over people get dogmatic and they're like, this is the way reality is. And I'm willing to fight and kill you if you don't see the world the same way I see the world. So, we've begun over the last several hundred years in little ways to see the unsustainability of that process. And the next step is to really become conscious of the decentralization and the personal sovereignty that we can take back to where we actually can believe what we want and then and not enforce that on other people. We can invite them to consider it. We can cooperate in that way, where we can share our perspectives, and what we can do that over social. Like, this is one of the cool things about social media where we're all sharing our perspectives and it's fiery and it's crazy. And the old paradigm about people need to see the world the way I see it, or else, this like strong arm brute force ideology is dying because we're seeing how ridiculous it is. I mean, how ridiculous is that to think that everyone needs to see the world the same way you do? The hard part about this, the difficult part is that ultimately what I found in having a lot of these conversations with people is that we're caring about something. Okay? It's like when people get really angry, really fired up, essentially there's something they're caring about. And the truth of the matter is that there's suffering kind of either way. Like, regardless of what you believe, regardless of the ideology or the way that you think things work, there's probably going to be suffering either way. And that's a hard reality to accept. Now, what people often think is that their way of seeing the world might cause less suffering in the long term. So that's hard because we're like, people are saying oh, you think this, but you should think this because your way of viewing the world causes suffering. So, I think just like in Buddhism, that it's good to accept that there's suffering. That's just part of how it is in the world. And when we can have compassion for the condition of humanity, that there's just suffering here, it can be easier to have these perspectives and to allow people, again, it's, this sort of energetic allowing of people to just see the world how they see it. And maybe we even need those perspectives in order to work together as a whole. So recognizing, again, number one, there's suffering regardless. And ultimately, what we can probably agree on is that that's hard. And we would like to see less suffering, if at all possible. And then again, the key here, the biggest key is have your opinion, believe what you believe, have as much certainty as you want. That's all good. But where the boundary lies, where I invite you to create the boundary, is when it starts to spill over into enforcement. Okay, if you feel the need to enforce, to use force to make someone agree with your reality, to make someone comply with the way you see things, I invite you to consider that there's something inside you that wants power over, that wants control. All of us have this in us. All of us have old control mechanisms because we're all born at this time of the world where it's just, it's just part of the deal of being human, is the karma or the condition of the planet. We're used to these control structures. So part of being triggered is we can open up to where are we trying to control reality? Where are we trying to control the world around us? And all that takes a lot of effort. That's probably the biggest problem with it. It takes a lot of effort to try to control people. It can be done for a time temporarily, but ultimately, it's not sustainable. It takes a lot of effort. So, again, when you get triggered, ask yourself, where are you trying to control someone else? And where are you attached to a belief structure that might not be serving you? Okay. Another tool for dealing with being triggered. So, part of this, there's two parts, and I just saw a quote the other day from a Hermetic tradition about how every truth is really just a half truth. There's a paradox to every idea. And the paradox that I want to bring to the front here is that one, we create our reality, and what we focus on grows it. The law of attraction, right? What you focus on grows. The other side to that, the other half of that truth is that there are structures already in place that we need to become aware of and have compassion for it. It's like embrace the dark and live in the light. And one of the ways to do this is by when we have strong emotions flowing through us that they in my experience, and I have had lots of experience with this and continue to have lots of experience, you can't tell. The reason why I can talk to you about all these experiences and these ideas is because I've been working deep in the trenches for quite a number of years now with all these emotions and all this. So I'm just speaking from experience here. So what we do with a deep trigger, another way to deal with it is to let it flow through. Can be really helpful in terms of letting it go and returning back to a place of awareness and groundedness and centeredness and flow by having what Robert Masters calls a conscious rant. It's a beautiful tool. So you set a timer for 3 minutes, maybe five, but really three is probably plenty. And go to go to a room, go to a place, maybe go to your car, borrow a friend's car if they'll let you for 3 minutes, roll up the windows and just let it all out. Just let that energy flow through. So a lot of times that fire just needs to flow through. That's all that needs to happen. And then after you've given yourself a few minutes with that, you kind of you get some perspective. You can see the ridiculousness. You can see what you needed to learn. Because again, it's an opportunity. So that's called a conscious rant. Just really let it fly. Don't, if it has to do with a particular person, it's important I would say it's important to not have that person around. Do it alone. What happens in these reactive states is we often say things that are quite ridiculous, that feel very real in the moment. We believe them 100% in the moment. And what is more ultimately true is it's just sort of the words that are based on a triggered response that, in 10 minutes from now or maybe 10 days from now, um, or 10 years from now, I guess, if you hold on to it for a really long time, um, you're not going to believe that anymore. And you might regret saying it, but it can sort of just help the energy to flow through. If again, you give yourself some time alone and have a conscious rant. So there's a good idea. There's a usable practical tip. Maybe write that down. Conscious rant. Again, that's from Robert Masters. I love that author. It's like in his 70s. He's this Zen master who's written over a dozen books. He's a psychotherapist who blends Eastern and Western methodologies. Really brilliant man, and that's one of his top techniques he recommends. Another technique is connecting with someone, and I prefer this one, is finding a neutral party or someone that you hire. I hire coaches. I do this for my clients. Is we talk about it right there because there's something about connecting with another person and allowing them to hold the positive pull while you go into the negative that can really allow those experiences to come through in the way they need to. There's something about having someone who can hold compassionate space, connected with your consciousness that amplifies what's actually happening. It's like, you know how you can be alone in your room, not feeling a whole lot, but just sort of, experiencing whatever it is. And then as soon as you connect with people, you feel more, right? For a lot of us, you know what I'm talking about. There's a way that connecting with people amplifies what we're feeling and the experience. Some people who consider themselves introverts, who would be more introverted, they feel drained when they're around people and they sort of get more energy by being alone. My theory is that all of us are introverts and extroverts at different levels, and we all need some of both people and alone time. But I think what's really exhausting, what I've found, is that what is the most exhausting is that when we're around people and we feel like we need to put on a show or pretend or sort of be on good behavior, whatever that means, and sort of be perfect and be shiny, for other people. There's a lot of effort that goes into that, right? It takes a lot of work. So it can be very draining to be around people. With this type of work that I do with people, with my clients, um, what happens is that you begin to relax. People begin to let go of the pretenses, of the ways they pretend, and of putting on a show a little bit over time. And it starts to come to the point where life actually energizes us more. Again, it's that flow that's not snagged so much on all the hard particles that are stopping that flow of energy. So, with that being said, I want to move into just a little bit of body scan meditation. And this will be maybe 5 or so minutes that we'll do this. And again, the reason why we would do this practice and the reason why you might want to follow along is because it allows your body to relax so that the energy can flow through, so that you can be more powerful, so that you can feel more free, so that life can energize you more instead of draining you. So if those sound like things you would like to experience, I invite you to follow along in this simple body scan meditation with me. You don't have to believe anything. There's no religious ideology. It's literally just like, hey, you got a body, right? Let's put our awareness in our bodies for a moment. And what that does is it gently invites tension to present itself. Again, tension is, tense, like tightness, where you're holding on. The belief structures we have, they're essentially held in our nervous system, all in and around our bodies. So when we put our awareness there, it allows it to relax, then the energy can flow. Okay. So we're going to do that right now. So wherever you are, I invite you to become aware of your breath. Just gently rest your awareness on your breath. And now allow your awareness to rest inside your feet. Notice your toes. Notice the band that connects your toes together, the arch of your foot, your heel and ankle. Notice any sensations in and around your feet. Being with your feet with presence. And notice how there are sensations there that you were not aware of. You were probably not aware of just 2 minutes ago. That's you. That's part of you and your feet right there. Your awareness, your energy. Move up into your lower legs, up to your knees, just noticing your calves and shins and the big bones in your legs. And invite any tension there to relax and let go into the earth. Notice your knees. See if you can put your awareness into the structure of your knees, the ligaments, cartilage, all that engineering, the tissues, bones. Feel your upper legs. And relax your legs, lower body, all the way from your pelvis to your feet. Notice how when you place your awareness gently in your body, that the thoughts don't seem so intrusive. They sort of just float on by. Less effort. Notice your lower body, pelvis, and low stomach, low belly, intestines, low back, right below your belly button. Allowing your inner awareness to gently wash over your internal organs and to relax and heal your insides. So moving up your belly and mid torso. Notice your rib cage, mid back and shoulder blades, muscles of your back, spine. Letting your awareness rest in your lower body all the way up to your shoulders, your full torso. Again, imagining that there's an inner breath, an inner awareness, sort of washing through you. Putting your awareness in your upper arms and elbows, noticing your forearms, hands, inviting your body to relax at a deep level. Feeling your neck and throat, your jaw and face. See if you can relax your eyes and the six muscles around each eye, behind your eyes, top of your head and the back of your head. Now feel your feet and allow your whole body to be filled with your awareness. There's something about this practice of presence that allows you to relax, that reminds you that it's okay to relax. And there's something about relaxing the body and putting your awareness in your body that takes you away from being driven by your thoughts so that the thoughts aren't running you so much, but that you are actually more of an observer. And then you have choice again, right? You can sort of choose where you want to go, choose what you want to grow, choose what you want to focus on. There's something about being present, being aware that allows you to be more effective in everything you do. Isn't that nice? So, a few minutes left here. If someone would like to call in, I do want to say one thing about being in connection with yourself and others and working through triggers that, on the one hand, you may want to put some boundaries up between you and another person. You may want to take some time and, you know, sort of be away from each other if there's been something, if there's something that's really fiery that you need some time to process what's going on. And that's great. I will say that there is a lot to be said for. There's a lot of value in being willing to be messy and to risk being unskillful in your connection, in your words, and maintaining connection, as opposed to defaulting to disconnection. That maybe something can come through. It's a risk. Um, Brad Blanton, in his book Radical Honesty, he talks a lot about this idea of telling the truth and about how it's messy. And he talks about, there's this one analogy he uses where he talks about sort of telling the truth, being authentic. The first few times someone's doing it, it can often feel like a volcano blowing up. It can be a really big thing. And then maybe eventually, if you do it more and more, it's less like the volcano a couple times a year, and it gets down to more of like, a little bomb going off. It's best analogy, but like, what does he use? Something in between a volcano and a firecracker. And then maybe you can get to the point where it's just like firecrackers going off all the time. So there's more and more authenticity. There's less effort going into pushing down all this sort of truth, this momentary belief is charged up. We don't have to hold that back, but we can literally just be ourselves more. And that's what I mean when I talk about, firecrackers going off all the time. In a way, when we relax into that space, that can actually be energizing. And there's a whole lot less cleanup that needs to be done. But I really invite you to take the risks of being a little bit more honest, a little bit more authentic than you think maybe you should be, so that you can experience what it's like to let go of control. Again, the more that we let go of our effort to control ourselves and other people, and we do it in proportion. of How we try to control ourselves is how we try to control other people. The more that we can let go of that, the easier it is for everyone, and the more that life can just energize us. That's the practice. That's all it is. We call it a practice because we practice it. We do it over and over, and we're willing to be unskillful at it until we get skillful at it. So if those sound like interesting ideas, sounds like things that you might like to practice, for a limited time, I am offering some initial consultations, initial sessions for some people. As long as I have some of these spaces in my calendar. There's sort of these types of conversations that help you get in touch with your purpose, find the flow in your life, find what you want to create again on the right hand, and then on the other hand, letting go of the blocks and the beliefs and the triggers and the ways that we sort of feel sabotaged, whether that seems to be coming from outside of ourselves or from the inside. So, a limited number of spots for a limited time here, initial um, free session with people. And if that sounds appealing to you, you can shoot me an email at aaron@fullyalive.coach. I think on the website here, if you're on nissancommunications.com, I think there's a link to my website. If someone wants to call in, where I shine is not, it's probably not so much in just delivering this information because it gets really conceptual. It gets really sort of logical and nitty gritty, and there's sort of like weeds, and it might not make a lot of sense. What I offer to people is an experience, an amplified experience of their reality. They get to know themselves and see themselves and experience themselves in a bigger way. The volume gets turned up so they can see it, so they can make changes if they want to. And it's not for people who need it necessarily. I want to be clear about that. My clients, the people that I work with, tend to be people who already have big goals and dreams. They tend to be high achievers and people who like to grow fast. It's like, one analogy is sort of like Michael Phelps, the famous Olympian swimmer. Like, I could probably guarantee you he can swim faster than his coach, right? Why does he still have a coach? Well, it's not because his coach is better than him. It's because his coach can see him while he's swimming. That's the point. Why does I've heard Tony Robbins himself has a team of coaches, 3 or 4 coaches. Like, why would one of the greatest coaches ever have coaches? Well, it's not because he needs them. None of us need life coaching, but it's an outside perspective that allows us to see ourselves, to know ourselves in a new way. And that allows us to have more of the experience that we're really wanting to in life, allows us to be in more flow and ease and live the dream, to live our dreams. And if that's not what life is about, then I don't know what it is. So, okay. So I think that's about a wrap today. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Feel free to, again, shoot me an email, any questions or comments. Those are much appreciated. Maybe, remember the tools that I went over of the conscious rant, of the embodiment meditation. By the way, you can find more of those, some guided meditations that are really good at dharmaocean.org. I'm not affiliated with them at all. They have no idea that I'm talking about them so much like I am, unless they're watching. Um, but dharmaocean.org has some free guided meditations online, and they're so easy. You just lay on your back, your knees up, which really appeals to me because I love laying down and sitting up is sometimes just it's uncomfortable. So that's a great place to get some more guided meditations. You can use the Insight Timer app, and these things allow you to relax at a deep level. A lot of times, the practices, if they're good, they're going to allow the tension to come to the surface, to get scraped off. Again, metabolized. Like that refining fire. That's what we're doing here. We are we're working on creating more empowerment, more relaxation, more harmony, flow, balance. And my wish for you is that you can experience what it means to be more fully alive all the time on this infinite journey. So, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Slow down and breathe. Have compassion for your family members, for those close to you. If you're having a Friendsgiving, happy Friendsgiving. And remember to honor the different perspectives people have, open to the opportunities of the intense sensations that may occur. Love you all, and I'll see you next Tuesday, 11 o'clock. Bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.